Welcome to the SunDried Tomatoes Podcast. I'm your host and creator, Anthony Ozo. And if you are watching on YouTube, you can find the audio-only version of the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher. Please follow, download, and subscribe where applicable. For those listening to the audio version, I do have this video version on my SunDried Tomatoes YouTube channel. So you can also go there as well and subscribe and check out some of my other shows that will feature sports, brewing, food, music, pretty much anything. Sports is a big thing, but I also have other shows, including Random Reactions, which I also do on IGTV, which just is about different news stories throughout the week. Some other videos I have on the NFL draft that just happened, and I'll hope to do that every year. Some European football or soccer for those in the United States. Some videos on that stuff as well, including a few of my original series, Legends of the Diamond, where I talk about some of the greatest ball players of all time that weren't allowed to play in the MLB from the late 1800s through the early mid 1900s. And my other show, Brewing the Facts, where I show you my process of home brewing a raspberry jalapeno wheat ale, and also talk about some interesting beer facts, such as brewing in medieval times and the origins of beer pong. I also have a new fantasy football show with a little bit of a twist that is coming out right now every Thursday until the end of the fantasy football season. It's called The Quest for the Green Bowl, The Shadows of Chaos, and I'm sure that intrigues you. Learn about how my actual league is faring throughout the year, and also check out my epic sci-fi post-apocalyptic theme where we've all been transported into the future to win an ancient relic, our trophy, in order to save the world from chaotic living shadows. Today, I'm joined by a special guest, my cousin, Austin Monaco-Genschaw, who's currently a junior at Flagler College in St. Augustine, Florida. He's majoring in English with a minor in philosophy. What's going on, man? Thanks for coming on the show.
For having me. I've been wanting to get on, so it's glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So Austin here, for a little bit of background, he's my younger cousin, of course. He's also a Green Bay Packers and Wisconsin Badgers diehard fan for the NFL and college football, respectively. He obviously grew up in Chicago, as I did. So he's also a Chicago White Sox fan, of course, and hopefully they stop losing the teams like the Angels soon. But when he was younger, we used to talk a lot of sports at family holiday parties. Austin even pulled me into a room once to show off his freestyle skills. So maybe he'll freestyle for you all today. I don't know. That's up to him. Austin obviously still follows a lot of sports. He's even dabbled in some illegal gambling, so he knows a lot of different things. Maybe he'll give some pointers to people as well. But today I want to discuss a couple of things, mainly some college football and NFL, since those seasons started earlier this month. For us, during this recording, they pretty much just started, with only one game for the NFL, a couple games for college football. While you're listening to this, a couple other games will have happened, but we'll try to keep up. Plus, MLB playoffs are obviously right around the corner. We'll discuss a little bit about that with our favorite team, the White Sox, as one of the contenders. Let's hope that they could actually do something. Before we get into all of that, though, I did want to touch on something that, some of us might have nostalgia for. Some of you who are younger might be also in college, but I wanted to talk about college life because, there's some interesting things I think a lot of people don't understand about, sort of getting used to it. And it's obviously could be very fun. It could be challenging, all kinds of things like that. I also think when you're in college, you always seem like you're the demographic nobody understands except maybe your closest friends. So, I want to get there. I personally went to the University of Wisconsin Whitewater, so that wasn't that far away from where we grew up in Chicago. But St. Augustine is obviously much further away. So Austin, I do want to talk about what was that like? You went from Chicago to Florida. Obviously, there's a big difference in maybe cultures, and it is further away. So you can't just take like 2-hour drive back like I used to at any point. I'm guessing you have to plan that more. But what's that like, and what made you make the choice to go there?
Yeah, I would say the first most difficult thing was something you already said, right? Was the cultural shift. I mean, that's completely the first thing you notice when you go from a big city to essentially a city with no skyscrapers and buildings. 15,000 people is only the population. So, that's definitely, I think that also creates a different social and economic view for the people that live here, the citizens, which was also something I noticed. Like in Chicago, things in certain areas are a lot more flashy and a lot of lights. Where here it's a lot more standard, I guess. But as far as making the decision to come down here, I think it was more of like when you grow up in the neighborhood. Obviously, we grew up in Bridgeport, but the city itself, especially with Chicago being a major city, it's easy to fall into a tendency to wonder or think that that's just the world, right? There's nothing really outside of the city that you grow up in, especially, like I said, with it being big. So I think that going to college, or just college period, was a great opportunity for me to be able to go away and kind of broaden my horizons. Wisconsin and Midwest schools where obviously I could have went played baseball near there, and that would have been nice to be close to family. But I wanted to kind of broaden my views, and I went to Florida. I found Flagler through a writing. I guess you wouldn't call it a trip, but it was like a convention-ish kind of thing.
Okay.
And so they're a liberal arts school, and I just felt like that would be a good place for me to kind of pursue my English major, which would be I haven't decided on teaching or writing, but along the lines of that. But it was a great opportunity to come here. Obviously, scholarships and money and all that stuff helps too. But I felt like coming down to Florida would really give me a chance to kind of grow up on my own, and so far it has. So.
Yeah, for sure. One of the reasons why I went to Whitewater is, to also get a little bit away from home. But it was one of those things where it's like, did I want to go too far away? I just kind of chose Whitewater because, one, it was good for journalism and writing as well. So I was obviously and I hilariously went to a creative writing convention in high school at Whitewater, and I loved the campus and thought that it was kind of cool. And I liked Wisconsin. So I was just like, oh, this seems like a cool fit. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, like maybe sometimes I'm like, I wonder if I would have went somewhere, further away, if that would have changed certain things. But at the same time, like, I don't necessarily have regrets too. Like I met a lot of cool people, and it definitely had a lot of fun times. And then I ended up in Madison afterwards, which was really fun. And now, I'm in the Twin Cities. So it's like, it's not like I haven't had opportunities or anything like that. So,
Madison.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Madison for sure was real fun, and I still have friends there. So I definitely, once the pandemic winds down a little bit more, I'll probably make more journeys down there. There's supposedly supposed to be a train possibly coming in the future as well, which would be pretty sweet because not driving is obviously awesome.
Right. A lot cheaper too.
Yeah, for sure. And what's hilarious is like, being in sports journalism, a lot of athletes I cover, they'll sometimes get offers all over the country, D1 schools. And some of them choose not to go to D1 schools because they know, okay, I'm going to get there, but I'm never going to play. I'm just going to like ride the bench and I want to play. So then they go D2, D1, or NAIA, just so that they get some experience, and then maybe they can move up later if they wanted to. And to be honest, in a lot of like basketball and stuff like that, you don't really need to go to D1 schools anymore. Or you could go to, kind of smaller schools and still get far with what you're doing. But a lot of athletes like to stay kind of close to home. And, I always thought that was interesting. They wanted to stay close to home, so, because they didn't want to be too far away from family. And even though Whitewater isn't that far, it was kind of similar to you. I wanted to broaden my horizons, get out of the city, meet new people and things like that. So, I mean, was it difficult for you, to be far away from home at the beginning, or did you just kind of get used to it right away?
Yeah, that was, I also want to mention, because you mentioned a good thing about athletes staying close to home. And I think that if I were to have gone to play baseball, a lot of those D2 and 3 schools in the Midwest, they offer me because they know athletes like me or like my friends. Like, that is something that they can appeal to, right? Is you want to be close to your family. It's such a grind to go through that season, wake up early, go through class. And, like you mentioned, I'm going to talk about being away from Florida. It becomes very difficult to be away from your family. So if I play sport, I probably would have done your route too. But as far as Florida goes, yeah, I mean, coming down here my first year and a little bit of my second year, I mean, it was very challenging because, I don't really have any family around me, and the family that I do have is regions, states away. So that was the first thing I really struggled with, was being away from my mom, being away from my dad,
Yeah.
not really being able to kind of unload on anybody.
Yeah.
So that was the tough thing, to kind of navigate through. But I think as time went on, like I became, good friends with my roommate. I met a couple of good friends through like fantasy football sports. I met my girlfriend down here, so life, got a lot easier as time went on. But at first, it was definitely challenging. There were times I doubted whether, I made the right decision, like you said, going far away. But
Yeah.
like I said, it all works out well. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, for sure. And I could totally see that. Obviously, your mom, Laura's, I've always been close to her cousins, and your dad was around a long time at Nani's house and everything, our grandma's house. So, we always had good conversations and everything. So I could totally understand too, not having someone to talk to when you need to, because there are times when you're in college that, things get tough, or you go through some depressions, or, normal stuff that people don't necessarily tell you a lot about. And to be honest, the kind of the college counselor kind of world and all that, it's not that good. Like
No,
I just,
absolutely.
yeah,
That was the thing I wasn't prepared for, right? Is they tell you college is hard, like something you got to adjust to. It's not the same as high school, but just that mental, like, it's so heavy on your body. It's so hard to just get through the day.
yeah,
I think that's what's such a struggle in the first year, right? And it's not talked about enough. Absolutely.
yeah, for sure. I mean, my first year, um, I didn't get like bad grades, but I was definitely getting a couple of C's, and I literally got straight A's in high school. So it was like a whole new thing. And a couple of the classes I got C's in, it wasn't necessarily that I wasn't going to do the work. It was that it was hard adjusting to the different professors and the way they treat people. I thought some professors I wasn't in a clique or something. So like, I just wasn't treated the same. I'm a little bit more introverted, especially in class. Like I'll join the conversation, but I'm not going to like forcibly just like raise my hand every question. Like I like to kind of sit in the back and listen, and then I'll talk when I need to. And sometimes professors didn't like that. There were a couple classes I thought were actually too easy or too boring, because they were just like slow, and I was a little upset with some of that. And then there were classes that were difficult, and it was kind of weird bouncing around all those things, and then you kind of talked about how you met some friends, and I did want to get there as well, because obviously that helps with the adjusting. The other thing is that they forced you to live in dorms at Whitewater for the first 2 years. I actually got out before that. Midway through my sophomore year, I just ate the money just because I wanted to live in a house with my friends. I was just so sick of living in the dorms. The RAs were usually jerks. They're usually messing with you, for no reason. You could be super quiet, having a couple of beers with your friends, and they'd like call the cops on you and like cause a whole scene, when they literally could have just been nicer about it. Or like, it's like, okay, cool, we're breaking the rules, but you have to be like like an asshole. Like you didn't really need to. But so like, I was curious about your living conditions, your first couple of years, and even now, like, and how you adjusted to that, because that is something you get a roommate randomly that maybe you never met. So if it's like, I became friends with my roommate, it sounds like you did as well. It would obviously be tougher if you didn't, but just that whole situation, it's like a completely different kind of feeling, living in the dorms and having to deal with different rules that you might not expect, because in Bridgeport you kind of get away with whatever you want half the time.
Right. Exactly. Well, no, yeah, I was gonna say, the biggest difference, I think, was having to follow rules, right? Because my parents, you were talking about my mom, right? Hard nosed. So of course, growing up, I had rules, but it was more of like, when you go to college, like you said, with the RAs, like a lot of times, you're sitting watching a game, having a few beers, or sometimes I like to put music on just a little low when I'm writing or stuff like that. So it was difficult having to like adjust to everyone else's living conditions too, right? But the room itself was like fairly big for a dorm, which I wasn't really expecting. I didn't know what to expect, I guess. The only time I'd ever really had dorm like living was when I played travel baseball. So when we were 12, we went to Cooperstown, New York, and there you stay in a bunker with like your team and coaches.
Yeah.
So that was the real dorm life I had. So obviously it was difficult. Like, you're living with somebody, so you got to watch like when you shower, or what things you leave out, or things like that. Like, you got to get to know that person first.
Yeah.
So that was a little uncomfortable, but I think once you break through that, the living conditions kind of, it is what it is. No one ever wants to live in a dorm, but
Yeah.
I got to get through it. My last year, the second year. So the first year you stay at a freshman dorm.
Oh, okay.
Right, which is right across the street from campus. But
yeah,
my second year I stayed at this place called FEC, which is kind of like a condominium. Me and my roommate were up on the third floor, kind of overlooked the city, so it was a great view.
Okay.
But I just couldn't stand dorm living, so I got out of there and I moved. I moved into a house with some roommates, some friends, and so that was the best case scenario, because dorm living, like you said, just ain't it. So
yeah, and I mean, obviously, when you get into a house, like, and now you could just kind of, I feel like it allows you to grow up better. Like, you're still having fun, you're still like younger, so like, we all do dumb things, but like, when it comes to not being in the dorm with those ridiculous RA rules, I mean, there's a story I have of one RA, of course, wearing a Cubs hat, grinning at me with his he had like white teeth, like he just whitened his teeth with a Cubs hat on. And he was literally grinning at me after they called the cops on us, even though we were completely quiet and literally not even we were literally having like one beer, like watching a movie, like really quiet, like a couple of us. And like, there was a little bit of drama with, one of the girls that was there. She was all upset, like underage drinking thing. We're just like, okay, whatever. And this guy's just grinning at me with his Cubs hat. And I'm just like, are you serious, dude? Like, it's like, is this what we're at? Like, I just didn't understand the whole, like, why are we being policed like we're like, 13 years old? Like, like,
it's just like, right. Like, and there's at Flagler, there's certain times, right, you can visit. Like, you can't visit a person like in our dorm after like 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. And I just thought that was so elementary, like you said. And a lot of RAs, like, they get off on that, like getting to like catch you not following their rules. So
the way I saw it is a lot of the RAs were I don't know, like, what kind of living they had growing up or whatever, but they seem to have it out for a lot of people. Like, I'm gonna like show you, like, maybe they were bullied or made fun of when they were in high school or something, but they definitely had, I mean, there were definitely things where it's just like, I literally didn't do anything and you like had to cause problems for no reason.
I hurt by doing that.
Yeah, I know there should be a little bit of different culture there, but then, people say, well, you shouldn't have been underage drinking. And it's like, well, whatever, like, and so, like, it used to be legal when you were 18. So I don't, everybody's culture is different. And, I understand, like, I'm not promoting underage drinking or anything, but show me someone who didn't and I'll say they're probably lying, like, so speaking of college stories, you got any college stories you want to tell? So maybe some things that you'll always keep as a memory, some crazy things that happen. We all have some crazy stuff that goes down when we're in college, things that maybe you never expect, and it lives on in infamy forever in your life.
Yeah, I think two things that I think I can remember. The first, obviously, being that, like, I went through COVID, right? So that was like going through college, like through COVID, was definitely something I don't think anyone has ever really experienced. Just aside from school, just the virus itself. But learning to learn online, Zoom, right? I mean, this is how I learned what Zoom was. So, I that was definitely a big change, right? Is like, because I'm kind of like you said, I like to sit in the back, hear everyone's perspective, because that's how I learn. I gain from hearing else their ideas that bounce around and how the teacher replies to them, or stuff like that. So not having that was really difficult, and then having to kind of what happens if I need to ask for help, or what happens if, I needed, like I had a paper due or something, and now the technology is not working. Right now, I can't turn it into you in person. So that was one thing that I think I'll always remember. Right, is going to college through COVID. Like that's insane. Second thing I think was our first semester. I think of freshman year. It was kind of like the same thing you said. It was just me, my roommate, and my buddy at the time, Liam. Just the three of us. I believe there was a Thursday night football game on. I can't remember. So we were just around, just sitting in the room, kind of watching the game, playing video games, but having a few beers, playing music a little bit on the speaker. So after a while, actually the RAs never ended up saying anything to us. So we got through the night just relaxing. But it gets to like I had the day off. We had class off the next day, which was Friday.
Yeah.
So we were having a good time, and our suite mate slides like a handwritten note from a notebook on underneath our door, because we share a bathroom. Like you share a bathroom with your suite mate.
Yeah.
He writes down that it's 3 a.m. We're making all this noise. No one is supposed to be up at this time. We're supposed to be asleep. He pays for his room. Like we don't pay for our room to be there either. And he wrote down this long note just begging us to please go to sleep, I guess. I don't really know, but that was the most outrageous thing to me. He's took the time to turn on a light at 3 a.m. to hand write me a note to tell me if I can turn down my music and stop drinking with my friends. So
yeah,
the two things.
Yeah. I mean, we all have the stories. There are a lot of passive aggressive people, and I think that's part of the one thing, especially us. We're coming out of Bridgeport, where it's just like, our family has a party culture, so like there's a lot of partying, a lot of people gathering, hanging out on porches. Like it's like a whole thing. No one really, there's not a lot of complaining really. Like no one complains like, how dare you do these things? Everyone just kind of, that they're just hanging out. Or it's like, or if someone came out and said like, hey, like, can you just keep it down? Like, I got to get up. Like no one's causing problems. Like you ask, you communicate. In college, I definitely learned that was not real. Like there was a lot of people that just, it's very passive aggressive. I mean, besides the RAs being passive aggressive, there was just other instances, and besides all that, we could go down a whole rant, but I want to get to more fun things than just that. I went to Wisconsin, of course, not far from Chicago. Obviously sports doesn't matter when you think about the sort of rivalry that is. I actually kind of got away with that a little bit because I already like the Badgers. I followed Northwestern a little bit too, but I also followed Wisconsin a lot and was like already a fan and just became more of a fan when I went to Wisconsin. I never really a lot of our family obviously loves the Chicago Bears, and there'd be times when I'd watch it with them and whatever, they get excited, you kind of get excited with your family, but to be honest, didn't necessarily care about the Bears that much. So I didn't really clash with Packers fans because I would just be like, I mean, to be honest, I kind of followed the Jaguars more than the Bears, so it's just like, whatever. And then when it came to baseball, since the Brewers had moved to the NL, I was always like a truce with them. Like, yeah, beat the Cubs. Well, I'll love you too. I'll root for the Brewers all the time. The only time I won't is if we meet in the World Series. It's kind of the same now too. But for you had to go to Florida, and that's a whole nother place. I'm guessing that's a whole nother thing of fandoms, and people could be fans of many different teams. I'm not sure how many people that in St. Augustine were just straight Florida fans, but what was that like? Did you have any disagreements with people, and especially when it came to who to root for in certain games?
Well, I mean, first coming down here, the first thing I noticed is, a lot of kids don't technically come from where I come from to go to school here. So it's more of like an East Coast. There's a lot of like Red Sox, Patriots, Steelers. But as far as the Florida, kind of culture with sports, it's very college football. I mean, they're diehard SEC down here, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Saturday is the big thing, like downtown and stuff. All the bars are filled with Georgia and Florida State. So that's kind of the mojo down here. But it was not really difficult coming down here, kind of talking NFL, because anyone who was really Jaguars fans, I mean, like you kind of mentioned, poverty franchise. So I mean, I didn't have much stress talk really coming back to me.
Yeah.
But I think I had never really experienced college football the way I did until I came down here.
Oh, I bet, because the SEC is obviously everyone loves college football down there. It's kind of like a way of life.
Like religion.
Yeah, for sure. And that must have been a little interesting as well. Did you get any oh, you're a Badgers fan, the Big Ten is not even close to the SEC type things?
Yeah. My roommate's actually he was born in Alabama, so he's not bandwagon. I like to mess with him and say he is, but he's a diehard Bama fan before Saban. But
Yeah.
He tells me all the time about Big Ten and no offense and turnovers and 10 games in the third going into the fourth quarter. So yeah, I've definitely a lot of SEC fans will give me the stick for being a Big Ten kind of guy. So because it's not really football to them.
Yeah, I bet, because it's a whole nother world. But the thing is that the Big Ten usually gives us the running backs and the offensive linemen, and and there's some defensive guys that come out of there as well. So it's like, and they succeed in the NFL. A lot of them. I mean, running backs struggled for a little bit, but Melvin Gordon's still doing pretty good. It's just. Yeah. It's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I guess it's not the same kind of football, but at the same time, when I see an SEC game and it's like 59-52, I'm thinking, don't they play defense down there?
Like, what is that? Like, that was another thing. Like, that's what I would always counter back with is like, how do you get into a game when you just know the other team's going to score every time? Like, it's just whoever gets the ball last. Like, we're just going to run it. We'll run it back against each other until the time just gets to 0.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's no strategy really involved. We just sling it all over.
Yeah. I actually think that's why they don't necessarily have great success all the time against Big Ten teams, especially in the regular season. The playoffs are different because you usually have a couple of weeks to prepare, but like when it's just a random regular season game, I mean, the Badgers have beat SEC teams, and, like obviously Ohio State has, and Penn State has pushed some teams, like they've definitely beat teams, because once you're playing the Big Ten style, the SEC I feel like they don't know how to play that style, and they get taken out of their game a little bit. It's like, yeah, they got world-class speed and they can definitely beat you with the big play, but if you limit that, then what do they got?
Exactly. I mean, Georgia's got a good defense, and LSU, in the past years, they call them DBU, defensive back U. So
yeah,
I mean, I know that it's there, or the players are there. Actually, LSU has Stingley this year. So, but like I said, just that, I mean, good for them. They could put up 60 points a game. I guess I wish Wisconsin could do that. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And actually transitioning a little bit to the Badgers, obviously we were both very disappointed with that Penn State game, that opening game of the season. And I'm sure many Badgers fans were, because they should have definitely won that game. They don't necessarily need a quarterback that's going to be Russell Wilson all the time, but just you got to be able to make a couple of throws, and not make any big time mistakes. And the quarterback play that game, like you were texting me, the offensive line play wasn't all that great as well. They probably could have rushed, when you look at how well the rushing game did even with the offensive line play, it tells you what they could have done. Obviously they bounced back against Eastern Michigan, but they should always beat Eastern Michigan, so it's like, is that really, I want to see them do that against maybe Notre Dame coming up, which that game would have, anyone listening or watching, that game would have already happened, but for us, it hasn't. So who knows what they're doing by the time you listen to this. If they won that game, we'll probably be feeling a little bit better. But, what are your thoughts overall on the Badgers so far this season? They do have opportunities, right? Because they have all these games coming up. So.
Right. Yeah. No, I think I'm very hesitant, I think, of this team, a little cautious, right? Because it always feels the kind of same every year, right? We're just waiting for Paul Chris to break out with the new quarterback. And I really thought, Mertz was the guy, right? This was his handpicked guy. He recruited him heavily, right? We had all these high expectations. We let Captain Jack go to Notre Dame. So this was going to be it, right? And it just I can't understand with Chris and, the same coaching staff. We retained the same coaching staff for years, right? Zero college football playoff appearances, zero Big Ten championships from Chris, right?
Yeah.
So that I mean, we're making the games, but if you can't beat Ohio State, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit hesitant. Only 2 games, so I can't make too much of the year so far, right? They dominated the Penn State game in the first half. Like you said, they should have won. And Eastern Michigan's a walk in the park every day of the week, or usually 7 out of 7. Right? So, I mean, I'm hesitant, but like you said, big games coming up. I mean, Notre Dame, Michigan. The next 2 games are against ranked opponents. One on the road, one at home. So, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, they still also have Iowa on the schedule as well, and that's probably their biggest opponent to beat if they want to make the Big Ten championship game, because obviously they're in the weaker division, which helps as well. But like you said, being able to push Ohio State or a Michigan or even a Penn State, if any of those teams end up in the championship game, if they win out and win the championship game, do you think that they have any chance at a college football playoff anymore after the loss to Penn State? And do you look at, if they make the Big Ten championship game, do they even have a chance to win that game at this point?
Yeah. I think for the college football playoffs, I mean, it looks a little dim, right? When you lose one game at all, and that it's kind of
unless you're Alabama, because they get to play Georgia and all those teams,
Yeah, and you get to start out ranked second, and you start the second, so you lose one game, you drop to 6 or 7.
Yeah, exactly. The Badgers dropped to in 19.
Yeah. So I mean that already is a catalyst on your season. So college football playoff, I think, is a little dim, but with that being said, right, you win at Notre Dame, top 10. You beat Michigan. You take care of them at Camp Randall, top 25. You beat Iowa in November, October. I think it's October 30th is the game, right? You win that game, top 5. Now things start looking different, right? And if Penn State continues to win football games, right, they take care of their side and they go neck and neck with Ohio State. Now all of a sudden, that loss in the first game of the season where Mertz, hopefully he improves the rest of the year. They can look back and say, he had a bad game. Wisconsin just, they never really caught rhythm. Identity is just, kind of flukish, right? Turning the ball over 3 times in the red zone. So I think college football playoff, maybe a little dim. But as far as the Big Ten championship goes, I think they can compete with Ohio State. They can compete with Michigan. They can compete with anybody in the Big Ten, right? Because the thing about it is Ohio State, seen weaknesses, right? The linebackers, the defense, I mean, they can't stop anybody. They cannot stop anyone who runs the RPO offense. As long as you make playmakers on the outside with Ohio State, you can beat them, right? And their quarterback, he's got the arm talent, but no accuracy. Everything's high. So, like I said, it's only the first couple games, so that could get cleaned up. Same thing with Michigan. They're taking care of their opponents, but I never really feel like they're coming to stomp on my neck on offense. Like I never really get that vibe from them. And a little bit the same with Penn State. The blueprint was in the first half to beat them. That's what we had. The first half was the blueprint to beat them. In the second half, they used our blueprint to beat us, right? Throw the little short screens and let the fast guys go. So,
exactly.
I think they can compete in the Big Ten championship game, but got to get there.
Yeah, for sure. And it's never easy. I mean, the one thing people never talk about college football, I mean, it's essentially every week is like a playoff. Any loss could end your season, I mean, like you said, losing the Penn State college football playoff, probably not happening, especially when you see all the other teams that they would have to compete with. You'd have to hope that they lose multiple games. I could totally see them putting a 2-loss Alabama team over a 1-loss Wisconsin team anyway, things like that. And when I look at watching that Penn State game, like you said, the inaccuracy of Mertz is what really irked me, because everyone's going to have a game where maybe they missed a couple passes, whatever, but he had a chance to kind of to put Penn State away, and he just missed passes that you should be able to make, especially at home. I mean, that crowd was insane. That was like the first time they had like a full crowd in a couple of years, and the student section was rock. Like I can feel the stadium shake at home, it was just, it's just, that should motivate you, and you should be able to, I mean, those kind of plays, it's like, okay, you're nervous. I understand that. By the fourth quarter, you're still that nervous. So you've been in the training camp with everyone. You got brought up, you obviously had your high school playing days. You shouldn't be that nervous anymore. Like, I mean, like you can have some nerves, but to miss every single throw, that's something that was a little concerning,
I remember when we were texting about it that night, I was really pissed off. So, but when I had time to cool down, I thought about it, right? And a lot of it goes back to Chris play calling in that game. Like if you look back, our first maybe 3 drives of the game, or 3 drives where, we put something together. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 pass plays from Mertz, right? We're running the ball 14 times to get down into the red zone. So when you're running 16 play drives, right, it gives the offense more chance to make mistakes, to fumble, to this, to that. But also it takes Mertz away from getting in rhythm of throwing the ball.
That is true. Yeah.
You get to the fourth quarter and we're down 6 points and we're like, screw it, Mertz. I mean, step back and start gunning it. And he wasn't in rhythm at all.
No, that is absolutely true.
Every throw. The only throw he could hit was a 5-yard curl route to Ferguson. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that would have been nice to have, like you said, early in the game to mix it up a little bit. I understand Chris wanted to get the running game going, and I understand he also wanted to control the time of possession to, keep Penn State's defense out there longer, and then also not because obviously Penn State has those speedy kind of playmakers, probably make sure that his defense isn't out there that long because they have to, be able to handle that. And to be honest, the defense played good, except they messed up they had a couple of breakdowns in coverage and it hurt them, a couple of missed tackles, but overall the defense played good. They shouldn't have been in that position though. They should have had a bigger lead. At some point, it's like, okay, you're playing kind of this management, but if you really think that your team is good enough to make the college football playoff, you have to take the training wheels off. You have to start trying to score points, like at some point. Yeah.
Exactly. Like I'm all for the first couple 15 play drives, but after a while, like when Mertz can't turn around and hand it off inside the 10 and we're fumbling, like now we got to think about start integrating other things in the offense besides just turn around and give it to Malusi every time.
Yeah.
So, I agree. But I mean, and that's another thing, right? I was looking at stats the other night. They're outgaining people on the ground, or just total yardage, outgaining people 877 to 356 in total. In rushing yards, they're out rushing their opponents 526 to 60.
Wow.
That's insane.
Yeah, that is
and
insane.
1-1. They're 1-1.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very insane. Like you don't see that often. And obviously hats off to Penn State. They earned the win, but it was just it was just one of those things where it was very frustrating because I've been through seasons where it was like, okay, the Badgers team, maybe they're not the most talented team, but they work hard and they all do their assignments and they totally got a shot. They'd lose a game like that. And I'd be like, oh, it sucks. But at the same time, like, I understand that, why they lost. That was like coming into this year. I was actually like, wow, like the Badgers look like on paper, like they have a good team. And then you look, and then just the way that they lost that game, like you missing those passes, being not in rhythm at all, they seemed to be inept on offense when they weren't rushing the ball. And then what Penn State did is essentially they gave up a lot of yards between the 20s, and then they tightened up in the red zone, and the Badgers didn't know what to do. Like they didn't know, it seemed like Mertz didn't even have options. Like it was just like, here's the play, you got to throw it to him, and there'd be another wide open guy that he didn't throw to, or he'd miss the throw completely. So it's just that part was frustrating, and I think it made it sting a little bit more. Was that it was like, they should have been more ready for those situations, and they definitely should have had better play calling. I'm sure, I know it's easier for us to say that sitting at home than the coaches and everything like that. But at the same time, you're getting paid a lot of money to be a college coach. So you got to take your criticism as well. So if anyone wants to say anything, it's just like, yeah, but you should get criticized and you should get better, and hopefully they get better. That's all I got to say about that. It's all we can hope for, really.
Starts with Chris, starts with Mertz.
For the rest of the college football, I mean, what do you think? Obviously, you're an SEC country, and you got Alabama always there, and like you said, Georgia is a very good-looking team. Oregon obviously is looking pretty good as well early on with that win over Ohio State. And then you got, your Oklahomas and your Clemsons and even Iowa's, obviously in the top 10 now. So, I mean, just, what do you see from all these teams? And do you, personally, I don't see any of these teams not having, none of them are perfect. So I feel like there might be a little bit of parity, a couple upsets coming up, but what are your thoughts on which of these teams might make a run here?
Yeah, I stayed away a little bit from picking the SEC because, it's such a tough conference that there are sometimes upsets, right? You can't predict.
Yeah.
And also, SEC is always kind of chalk every year, right? You expect them to be good to run through their opponents. And so, honestly, when they're not beating teams by 50 points, that's unimpressive to me because that's what I expect out of them. But one team I do want to talk about, and I want you to look out for, they're ranked 13. And so since I've been going out to school, since I've been going to college, I have trouble going to sleep at night sometimes. So college football season was always a good time for Pac-12 football. I love it. It's on at midnight over here, Eastern time, until 2 a.m. So I got to fall in love with Pac-12 football. So a team I want you to watch out for is UCLA this year.
Okay.
A lot of people haven't talked about them in many years, right? I think a lot of people think Chip Kelly fell off the end of the earth or something, but he's still coaching the football team.
Yeah.
And got a quarterback, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, or DTR, they call him. And their running back is the grad transfer from Michigan, Zach Charbonnet, I think is his name. Yeah. Two explosive guys, right? Quarterback, running back. They can put up points, but their defense can stay with an opponent, right? They knocked off LSU, their second game of the season. I think their first game was against Hawaii, so not much of a test there. But they knocked off LSU, and now I'm looking at their schedule, right? Because Oregon beats Ohio State. Now all of a sudden the Pac-12 gets interesting. So in Arizona State, it started out hot, right? They're scoring 50 points a game. So I looked at UCLA's schedule because they're 13 right now, so they're positioned to move up a little bit. They have 4 games coming up that I think are big. September 25th, which is next weekend, at Stanford, right? David Shaw at Stanford at home, always incredible. So that will be a tough game. October 2nd versus Arizona State will be at home. But the reason why I love this matchup is because I was talking about UCLA loves to score, and so does Arizona State. Their offensive coordinator, Zach Hill, he used to be at Fresno State head coach. Now he's at Arizona offensive coordinator. Love the score at Fresno State. Loves to score at Arizona State, putting up 50 points a game. This guy's like McVay on stimulant drugs. Just sling it. We were talking about offenses putting up 59. Well, yeah, to do it. So I'm going to be interested to see that game. And then the final 2 are October 23rd versus Oregon, obviously top 5. Yeah. And then the one is always a tough one because it's a rivalry game, November 20th versus USC. So if USC could get things going without JT Daniels, because he's at Georgia now. So they could get things going. All of a sudden the Pac-12 looks interesting, and UCLA, watch out, man. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting to add on that. Everyone always throws shade at the Pac-12, right? Like they rarely have any kind of college football talk at all. If you have Oregon doing well, like they just beat Ohio State, if they keep doing well, UCLA keeps doing well, that actually helps both of them probably when they play, whoever wins that match, and then whoever wins the Pac-12 title. Obviously, maybe it looks like it was a tougher road. How do they not put a Pac-12 team in the college football playoff if they're undefeated at that point? So that could be that definitely could be very interesting. And it's UCLA is definitely one of those teams that people don't obviously they used to be a powerhouse, but it's just people have not been looking at it. And then when it comes to Chip Kelly, they think because he didn't work out in the NFL, it's but do you not realize that the reason he didn't work out in the NFL is he thought his college system was going to work in the NFL year in and year out. And it proved that you can't do that. It's a completely different game. But his college football system was still really good in college football.
Yes.
Right. So it's just you definitely have to watch out for that. Especially like you said, they're putting up all those. If they're going to be putting up all those points, they're going to be putting on a show. They'll at least be fun to watch, right?
Absolutely. I don't know. I saw them play LSU, and I know LSU they were ranked at the time. They're not now. And we were talking kind of about Pac-12 being an important conference, and of course that could change if the rankings change. But right now, I mean, you're looking at it, and it's SEC and Pac-12, the 2 most conferences with ranked teams, and Big Ten right after. So So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just something to look out for. I watched them play LSU. I was impressed, right? That kid DTR can run an offense. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of college football playoff, because I do want to get into this, I wanted to get your thoughts on the format right now. Obviously, they're talking about adding more teams to it in the future. I always thought that, when it was just the old system was just garbage, in my opinion, because, yeah, there would be a team that was like worlds better than all the other teams, and you expected them to be there and win. But again, they're worlds better. They should win games if they had to play a couple of playoff games before they made it. But then, usually like the other team that would play that team, and sometimes both teams that were in the picture that were going to make the title game, there was all this other parity that, you would hope that they maybe got another chance or a chance to play those teams, because a lot of those teams don't even play each other, unless they put 15 SEC teams in the top 15. A lot of these teams don't play each other. So like when I look at it, I personally would like to see some sort of like a 15 team type playoff, because there's so many college teams, and yeah, odds are the teams that are ranked lower are not gonna win the whole thing. They might score some upsets though. There might be some excitement for fans. And then at the same time, you could, the top teams have to play. They can't just walk into the title game because, somebody said so. And I think it really comes into play when they put like a 2-loss Alabama team in. It's like, yeah, I know Alabama's really good and other teams blew their sort of chance to go over them in those years. But at the same time, when I see that, I'm just like, they still lost 2 games. Like, why do they just get handed a chance at the title? And then they're going to get to prepare for that game for a month. And yeah, they're probably going to win, and it's just like, okay, but were they the best team all year? You would want to see other teams get a chance to play them, and then maybe not have that month of preparation time. You're playing playoff game here, playoff game there. You only got a week now. It changes everything. It leaves some more upsets, and maybe you can have like the 15th and 16th ranked teams kind of play a play-in game to see who's the 15th team, and then have like maybe you can give buys to some of the teams like automatically to like the quarterfinals, whatever. Like how they do the Big Ten playoffs in basketball, they get of all those buys to like the top 14. Maybe they could do something like that. I just think that would be, it'd be cool to see. And I think, and again, I understand that people are worried about injuries and things like that, but there's a way to maybe work that in. Maybe you don't have, if you have a playoff, maybe you don't need to have non-conference games. You just play your conference. You could give automatic bids to people who win their conference and things like that as well. So there's a way to kind of maybe shorten the season. And then you're still making a crazy amount of money if you make those. And you can still have bowls on top of that for all the other teams that didn't make it, so there's still like, and I hate that excuse, but yes, they're billionaire people in college football. They want money. So the only way anything's going to happen is if they're making their money. So I see it as like a way for them to make money if they want to look at that, because then the teams that are in the playoff aren't playing a 20-game season. You cut out a couple games in the season, only play your conference. You could have your conference championship game or not do that at all if everybody plays each other once, so I don't know, maybe there's ways to do that. I know there's a lot of debate, but what are your thoughts on this? I mean, do you like the playoff as it stands now? Do you like the thought of going up to 8 teams, which is, I think, what they've been talking about in 4 or 5 years or something when the TV deals change? What are your overall thoughts on this?
Well, the original, it used to be the BCS, right? BCS National Championship. So when they did one number 1 plays number 2, I kind of thought similar to what you thought. Is it always kind of felt like it was the same team every year, right? Kind of the, what have you done for me lately? Well, this team has done good, so we're just going to throw them in every year.
Yeah.
And so I kind of got tired of seeing, Bama, and it was always like Ohio State or, maybe Oregon when they had Mariota. But I hated that too, because like you said, 2 losses, like sure, on paper, like half the roster is going to the NFL. Like obviously they're better than everybody else, but 2 losses, like when they needed to come together, they didn't do it. So why are they getting a chance to hold up a trophy when, there's an undefeated team from the ACC or something? So, so I kind of struggle with that, but I never thought about your 16 team proposal. I kind of like that. I never really thought about that. The only kind of thing, I would bring up as an opposition to that, and I guess it's kind of the same for me, is I am in favor of the 8 team. I like that. I like 8 teams. I
Okay.
think 16 is a little bit too much, but only because it starts turning into like March Madness a little bit,
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Which
yeah.
I know is kind of what you were kind of getting at, right? It makes them a lot of money,
Yeah.
but then you got to shorten up the season, right? And then
Yeah.
how do you decide conference champions when you're only playing because then they can only play maybe 7 season games,
Yeah.
and you got to play non-conference or maybe take out those games against the FE or FCS schools. But
Yeah.
I'm kind of in favor of 8, but I think if they're going to do that, 8 or 16, right, they got to implement some sort of like computer system that starts making up these teams rather than guys' opinions.
Yeah.
At least with March Madness, they make these brackets, but they have a system that they go by.
Yeah.
So at least we know like what a team should be shooting for. But like
Yeah.
with the college football playoff, it kind of just feels like, if you win enough games and you put up 70 points a game, we'll put you in.
Yeah.
So,
And I think
so
the main
I was going to say, no, I'm just in favor of 8, but I like your 16 proposal. I just feel like some teams that are left on the outside might still have complaints about,
yeah, for sure.
School popular and yeah.
And unless every team is included, someone's going to have a complaint. But like and yeah, like I totally understand opposition to things. The thing is with even with 8, the reason why to expand it is some of the other schools that aren't part of the big conferences need chances because there's been some very good teams that like went undefeated and people are like, well, but their conference isn't that good, and it's like, okay, like have you seen football? Like, I mean, these other teams are still putting together teams and game plans. It's not easy to just run the table. Like if you're that dominant, like and you destroyed your whole conference. Well, does that mean that you're a worse team just because you beat them worse? Like, like I don't understand it. You should at least get a chance at playing some of the other schools and see if you can beat them. And I know like they'll pull up, well, there've been some teams and then they lost their bowl game. Again, you get a whole month to prepare for those. Like when it's a season game and it's just week in and week out preparing, it changes things. That's why you have so many upsets during the season. And then the bowl games come and it seems like the bigger schools tend to win a lot. It's because you get that preparation time. So all the little things, all the trick plays that those other teams can do if they have any gimmicks, they're kind of taken away. And Alabama, their coaching staff is really good. Nick Saban knows how to prepare for things. So if you notice, a lot, if Alabama takes on anyone, like look at how they destroyed Ohio State the one year. They took down Clemson. They destroyed them, like it's just the reason why they're doing that is because they prepared for a month to beat both of those teams, looking at all of the stuff that they throw out there, and they prepared for it with their NFL roster. And they were able to succeed. So I think having the more teams just to give those other teams a chance, I guarantee that there'll be at least 1 year where we're all talking about one of those random small schools and how they won the title one year. It's going to happen. Like it's just going to happen. I mean, look at how
I would love that for college football. That's why you're pulling me in with the 16 teams because I like you're going to get like Iowa State versus like Oregon or something, and they're going to pull off an upset, and I would love that. I mean, who wouldn't? So
yeah, what it would mean to the fans too would be insane. It'd be people would be storming fields and it'd be nuts, especially if you could have some games, home games and things like that for teams. However, they would set that up if there was neutral sites later. But that would be interesting. I mean, look at March Madness. We had our 16 seed top of 1 seed finally. Like you knew it was going to happen eventually, and now every time we watch a 16 and a 1, we're thinking, hey, this can happen now. Like
we've seen it.
Yeah, so it's like if it's
16-1 close game, they like blew out Virginia. It was by like 25 points.
Yeah, exactly. So it was definitely no fluke, and they almost kept going too. Like they had a shot, which would have been even crazier. You're definitely getting more double seed wins too. It just took time. It was one of those things where it was like as soon as you get all the talent that exists in the sport at the high school level, realizing, hey, I can go anywhere and our team could get on the map and I could make a name for myself. I feel like a lot of kids will be they'll be like, hey, go into the smaller school, something that I like. I don't have to go to this big school. Maybe, they wanted to go to like a smaller city or something like that. And then at the same time, it's like, okay, now they're gonna make a name for themselves at this school. Well, that's like more epic than like, oh, I was one of the best players on a roster of Alabama with all NFL guys, you know. to say, hey, I was one of the leaders on this small school that beat Alabama in the championship, you know. Like, I just think that would be more epic, and I think a lot of high school kids will be like, hey, I want to be that guy. Like, you know, you're probably getting drafted into the NFL. You do something like that, like guaranteed. You know?
I think I agree with you. That's interesting. Because not a lot of people talk about that take, but that's very interesting because in college football, you're right. It's not really like that, right? Alabama, Clemson, kind of but in basketball, I see that a lot now, especially the past 3-4 years, right? Like the number one recruit going to Memphis.
Yeah.
What's his name? He plays in the NBA now. I can't even think I'm not a big NBA guy, but you know, he went to Memphis, or Wiseman, that's his name. He went to Memphis. It's like insane, right? Because why would a number one recruit be going to school there? But I love that a lot of those kids in college basketball are doing that now, realizing they can go anywhere and, like, you know, let's run it. Cade Cunningham at Oklahoma State. I mean, you know, those are good examples, but I'd like to see that in college football.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet for sure. All right, so let's we talked a lot about college football. Let's move on to the NFL. Obviously, you're a big Packers fan, so I gotta ask you, what are your thoughts after that horrible game against the Saints in Week 1? I mean, you know, obviously Rodgers essentially said, relax again. He's saying it was only one game. But I mean, besides your thoughts on the game, do you also think that part of that was because he held out and didn't really get into sync with anyone? I feel like that a lot of their new faces didn't know what was going on, and it seemed like Rodgers would audible and then the play would be terrible. And that's not what I'm used to seeing. Usually like he audibles and suddenly some great play happens. You know, I didn't see that at all against the Saints, you know?
Yeah. Well, my thoughts about the game were like, it's simple, right? We got our ass kicked. Like, that's very simple. I don't know if it felt a lot worse because I was at the game sitting in the Jacksonville sun, beating down on me, sweating, and watching Rodgers just throw the ball all over wherever he wants. Like, I mean, maybe that added a little bit salt to the wound, but no, I mean, the biggest thing I noticed, especially from being up there, as I could watch and see the whole field, was just the timing was so off.
Yeah.
And I went to the game with my girlfriend Jasmine, and I was talking to her about it. Like, you know, that's something I would have expected from Pettin and LaFleur, like in 2019, coming off when Chicago won the division and the double doink, and the next year, right, that first game. I thought Trubisky was the truth, right? That was when I would have expected the communication breakdowns and us not being on the same page and looking lethargic. Like, not 2 years later, I expect that in your first game against the team who just lost their Hall of Fame quarterback and replaced the Hall of Fame quarterback with someone who hasn't played quarterback in 2 years. Right? So that was very concerning to me. I mean, aside from just getting our ass kicked, it's different if it's San Francisco. But when you lose to Jameis Winston like that, I mean, it was concerning. But to answer the second part of your question, I mean, I don't think entirely it has to do with Rodgers' offseason entirely, but for sure, I mean, that definitely played a factor, right? Because what kind of message, just take the summer aside. What kind of message are you sending? I'm not talking about like Devontae and Za'Darius. Like, those guys are fine will be fine without Rodgers. They're going to get their money. Like, Devontae will get his money. But like, what does that send to AJ Dillon, like the second string running back who like wants a ring and loves Aaron Rodgers, like playing for Aaron Rodgers, and like Bobby Tonyan at tight end? Or what does that say to Bakhtiari? Or, you know, I mean, I guess Bakhtiari got his bag too, but you know, it sends a bad message to the team, right? Like, I'm giving up on you because I'm arguing with our parents, basically. That's kind of what it is, right? Like, think about all my brothers. I'm with all my brothers, but I'm not going to talk or hang out with any of you guys because our dad and our mom are like, you know, being rude to me. You know, they're sending my friends home when I want my friends here. Like, you know, that's kind of how it felt to me. I understood where he was coming from, but did it play a factor week 1? I mean, I'm sure it did, right? There's no way you lose 38-3 like that without it affecting you. So
yeah, and that's a good point, because I actually also believe that too. When you have, it's one thing, the veterans that are there, they know what's going on, and they're just like, oh, you know, Rodgers will come back and blah blah blah. But yeah, the guys who are that haven't been there that long, maybe look up to Rodgers. And I definitely saw that with the receivers. He was out of sync a lot with not just Devontae Adams. I mean, Devontae Adams made a couple of decent plays. He just didn't get a lot of targets, and then they took him out of the game when they didn't. You don't want people to get injured when you're getting blown out that bad. But it's just, it definitely sends a weird message to a team when football, and this goes all levels, the one thing they preach is we're all family, we're all brothers. Like, so that is a thing. Like, so they're all preaching that. And then it's like, oh, but you want to get paid, and you're just like, I understand that, but then you're just going to leave us here like alone, like you're going to retire. Like, and when he started talking about retiring and stuff, I was just like, that's not going to be good. Like, and do I? Yeah.
No, I mean, go ahead. You could finish.
I was going to say, like, when obviously it's just one game. I also don't expect it to happen multiple games. It's sooner or later they'll get in sync, but they play in a division where they probably have room for error. They should probably win the division, but like at the same time, it's just like you shouldn't have like made some of those things like public, like to put it in the public eye like that. It looks really bad. No, the fact that a lot of those players, the only time they're hearing from Aaron Rodgers is when ESPN is reporting on something nuts, like Aaron Rodgers might retire and just be on Jeopardy for the rest of his life. Like, like, it's just like, okay.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to get to, right? Is like, he's not talking to anybody all summer. So no one really knows what's going on. And so you kind of go from this, like, we're freaking out. What are we going to do without Aaron? And then all of a sudden, like, here he is in the parking lot walking in with like the office shirt on and sunglasses and his hair in a man bun. Like, and all of a sudden he's back. And I think that kind of infested the facility, right? Is like, oh, well, he's back. We're fine now. Like, we're just going to be just like we were in February against Tampa or January against Tampa. Like,
yeah,
we'll just be right back in with them. Like, everything's going to be okay. And that was not the case at all. But not only that, is they don't hear from him. He shows up and he goes to his press conference, and the first thing he says is, yeah, I was 50-50 on whether or not I was going to retire. That's what you say. You don't see that in your press conference. Yeah. Like, that baffled me that he just – like, I get he's an honest guy. Like, he's going to lay it on straight. Like, he's always been that way, deep thinker. But being a deep thinker, you should understand the words that has an effect on that team. Like, you were thinking, like, maybe I'll come back to – like, they're going to come to him and be like, you were thinking, like, should I or shouldn't I come back? Like, we were this close to a Super Bowl. How do you just hang us out to dry to go play in Denver?
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely crazy. I definitely looked at it too. Like, I understand he wanted more weapons and things like that. I completely understand that. And I definitely think that the Packers front office maybe could have did better at like maybe stroking his ego while still doing their own thing. I mean, like, it happens at other teams. A guy is like, oh, I need this, I need that. And, the front office kind of plays damage control. I feel like this front office didn't do that. They kind of both were petty, and that definitely, it hurt everything. And then you have, at the same time though, you have Rodgers coming in, like you said, saying that stuff at his press conference. Like, it's just, it's going to make guys, maybe there's a lineman that's like, okay, I'm going to miss this block. Like, I just think like that stuff happens. Like, they're like, okay, you were not going to want to be with us and we're going to leave. The thing is that you look at the Packers roster, they should be Super Bowl contenders again. So even without what he wanted, like the extra weapons, it's like, so they're still going to be Super Bowl contenders with the roster that they had. So it's just like I know they lost Jamal Williams, but AJ Dillon is probably easily going to fit into that role. Like, I saw him make plays last year. I think he's going to be fine, and they'll have, Aaron Jones and him doing their thing. But like, it's just, you had this team and they were probably going to be fine. You had some injuries last year too that maybe hurt a couple of spots. Like, like it seemed like Lazard was making plays, then he was injured, and then he never really got back in the rhythm. Like, so maybe he's going to be better with a full year, things like that. But it's just, you're going to go to Denver and you think Denver's going to win a Super Bowl. Like, I'm just like, I feel like Green Bay is your best bet at winning a Super Bowl right now. So I was a little confused at that whole situation.
I was gonna say, I mean, like I think, I mean, me and my dad were kind of talking about that too, right? Like if Rogers was on Denver and this was happening with John Elway, like him and Elway were arguing back and forth, right? And he was gonna leave. Green Bay is like the first place you think of, right? Because
Yeah.
the team's there, like the coach is there, like he would have had everything, and that would be the first place you would think Rogers would go, right? Because all we would be missing is a quarterback. So
Yeah.
for him to just kind of, and then all summer talk about like what did he say? The loudest man in the room is the one who keeps silent or something like that. And then just come out and say like, yeah, like I was 50-50. I'm bailing out on this whole organization, but they brought my best friend Randall Cobb back. So I decided I'll show up.
And where was Randall Cobb last week?
right.
Yeah, that was definitely weird. Again, the one thing working on Green Bay side is they're in the NFL North, which I'm going to guess that 10 or 11 wins in a 17-game schedule is probably still enough to win that division this year. Just based on what I saw from the Vikings blowing against the Bengals, the Bears. We could talk about them, kind of laugh at them a little bit later on. And the Lions are going to be the Lions. Like Goff tried to come back against the 49ers, but they were getting blown out most of that game, and that was all garbage time, in my opinion. I think San Francisco just took their foot off the gas and just kind of let them back in, a couple of freak onside kick type things too.
Right?
Yeah.
Super 6-3 or whatever that was. Yeah. 28-3.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just, those things happen. So obviously Green Bay is going to have a shot to win the division, and then you make the playoffs and you're going to be a contender to make the Super Bowl. So, I'm guessing you would hope that they get all this stuff ironed out by then and, play at a high level by that point. So, obviously Kansas City and Tampa Bay still look pretty good. When you look at their rosters, everyone's going to talk about them as favorites for a rematch. But we all know how difficult rematches are. I mean, first of all, the AFC is like a gauntlet, and the NFC is actually looking better than it was when you look top to bottom. Even teams that maybe are not going to make the playoffs, they might not be as easy to beat. So anything can happen. And then you got injuries too. So, and we're all waiting for Tom Brady to fall off this cliff, but I guess he's like a robot or something. So he just keeps coming. But, do you think Green Bay can, if they win the division, make the playoffs, do you think Green Bay can finally can beat Tampa Bay, get a little bit of revenge against them if they play them again in January? Do you think that they could make the Super Bowl with the roster that they have?
Yeah. Well, first answer the question about making the Super Bowl with the roster. Absolutely. I mean, like you were talking about it, right? We were talking about if Rodgers were to leave Denver, he'd go to Green Bay. So the roster is definitely ready to win a Super Bowl, 100%. I mean, they were ready when Rodgers was deciding what he wanted to do in the summer. The only kind of caveat I have they can beat Tampa Bay. I mean, they probably should have won the NFC Championship game last year. But the problem I have with it is just the feel of everything, right? It doesn't feel right to me anymore. Like last year, everything felt right. It felt like it was our year. Like, yeah, Tampa, like they took us behind the barn and spanked us like when we were in Tampa, but when they came to Lambeau, like I was like, this is it. Like we could beat them, and we were in the game. We played them well. It just feels like this year, like after the summer with Rodgers and just the team doesn't yet. I mean, I know it's only been one game. They just don't look like they've really taken any steps forward. And I'm not even just saying that because they got blown out week one. But do you notice it's the same reoccurring thing with this team, right? Every time they get their ass kicked, right, it's the same thing. Getting pounded on the run, or guys like wide open receivers, wide open, can't get anything going on offense. Offensive lines getting bullied. Like these are things they're not correcting, and that's what concerns me. Right, we're going on 3 years, or this would be our year with LaFleur, right? And it's the same recurring like fatal blows to us. Yeah. And so I think they need to figure out what that is before they're able to take on Tampa. Like right now, the problem with Rodgers and why the offense can't get going on the times, blown out is I don't know what it is, right? He's a Hall of Fame quarterback, but too high safeties. And all of a sudden our all offense cannot be run anymore. Like we can't run anything. Yeah. So I think they need to learn how to, move Devontae around, move Jones around, kind of get him integrated, get Bobby Tonyan out when there's too high safeties, because teams are going to beg the Packers to run the ball until Rodgers can prove that he can sling it on too high safeties, cover two.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. All right, when I stick in with the NFL North now, this is for our family in Chicago. I know a lot of Bears fans. Just talking about the Bears, I do think that Justin Fields could be good, and he'll probably, end up starting over Dalton at some point this season. He definitely has some tools, but the thing is when I look at the Bears, and I saw this last game too, I see the defense as they went all in thinking Mitch Trubisky was the guy. So they got Khalil Mack and they built this very good defense. Well, now it's a little later in all those guys now. Some of them have been dinged up for a couple of years. They're definitely getting older on defense. So I think there's a lot of other things to fix than just a quarterback. So the thing that I would to tell any Bears fan is I'm sorry to tell you, but I don't think that the Bears are going to be making Super Bowl runs anytime soon. Even if Fields does really good, I'm guessing Fields is going to end up being hurt by coaching changes too, because let's be honest, the Bears don't do bad if they don't make the playoffs this year. How long is Nagy staying around? When he's probably going to be fired at some point. That's just the way it goes. And then Fields is going to have another coaching staff come in, and then that usually takes a year or two to get under. So it's like, they probably need a miracle where Justin Fields is suddenly one of the greatest quarterbacks as a rookie, like out of nowhere, like putting up Justin Herbert type numbers from last year, and because this is probably, the defense will be okay, probably be better if their offense can stay on the field. But for this year, next year, I'm not so sure. So it's just like, what do you wait? Like, it's like, okay, Fields, maybe he's better by year 2 or 3. I think he has a lot to learn still. But then who's going to be your defense? What about your other playmakers? Like, they don't really have a lot of big name guys. They signed a bunch of speed at receiver, things like that. But nobody that besides Allen Robinson, like nobody's like, oh my God, this guy's going to make some plays in clutch situations. And it's just, I see so many things. And I think that the secondary is going to continue to struggle. The offensive line is just not a lot of depth. David Montgomery looks like he could be good, but will he be good in 2 to 3 years when we know how running backs only have a short shelf life? Like, is Montgomery still going to be, the goal line guy in 2 to 3 years? Like, we don't even know. Like, it's like, cool, they got Fields. They finally got a quarterback maybe, but then they have so many other things wrong. I just don't see them as challenging for Super Bowls in the next 2 to 3 years. Unless they go nuts and hit on every single draft pick that they have. They probably need to not do well this year so that they could get a high draft pick and get some other guys, because they need more help. And they're certainly not a signing away, like a free agent away in the offseason from doing anything. So, I just don't think our family is going to be too happy with the Bears in the next couple of years. So I wanted to get your thoughts on, what you think about that. And I'm sure your mom is going to kick both of our asses after talking about this.
Right. Well, for the record, she loves the Fields kids. So I guess I know I really liked Fields. I think before the draft, I said he's better than Zach Wilson. I don't know why everybody, hypes up Zach, but I love Fields, but kind of the same concerns you have, right? Is I don't really know how he fits. Like, even if he is really good, they're a wild card team exit at best. Like, yeah. And like you said, Danny Trevathan at linebacker, and you got Eddie Jackson, right? Just staying the Bears for a huge contract, and he can't tackle anybody on 3rd and 16. So I always respected the Bears defense. Like, it was always, being a Packers fan, knowing to play them right, it's going to be like, we're going to have to work the score. So yeah. I knew that, but I think Pace and Nagy kind of fluffed up the fans a little bit when Mitch, had the double doink year after that, right? Like, this is our guy, this is it, it's all coming together, and that was never the case. And now, now they kind of, there's a good quote too, talking about if you were to inherit the world, you have to forfeit your soul, right? So they inherited the world with Justin Fields, but they have nothing else around. Like Allen Robinson is on franchise tag, right? So he's gone.
Yeah, he's not going to stick around long.
And who do they have outside that? Darnell Mooney. Like, I like Cole Kmet. He's a good kid. Like, I like it. And like you said with Montgomery, like, yeah, he's he proves he could be a workhorse. He could take 20, 25 attempts a game, but there's nobody after him. Like Tariq Cohen, I mean, eventually once he gets healthy, but there's just he doesn't really have anything to play with on offense. And I'm afraid, like the Bears fired Lovie Smith after 10 wins. Like, even if Nagy wins 10 this year, goes, 10-7, they make the playoffs. Like, if they don't win the Super Bowl, Nagy's gone. So now you got to bring in a new coach that will work with Fields, but that now you're just you're doing the same thing over again, right? Because you select Mitch, and then you fire Lovey and bring in Nagy, and it doesn't work out, right? Because it wasn't the guy he wanted. So now you let Nagy take Fields, and you're going to boot him out of town and bring someone else in. So I don't know. They made the right move. Pace made the right move with trading up to get Fields. I like him, and I think he'll be good. But I just don't really see how you can get behind a team that has an aging defense and no playmakers on the outside.
Yeah, and exactly. And that's it's not good when you have a couple of injuries and then your team's done. Like, what happened to the whole next man up? Like, how come other teams like the Packers, like they have injuries, the next guy comes up and they're still winning games? Like, how? Like, I know they had Aaron Rodgers, and before that, you had Brett Favre, and you had, when you have a good quarterback, that's a big thing to do. So it's like, yeah, Justin Fields, if he ends up being good, that's really awesome. But the thing is at the same time, the quarterback can't just do everything, just like the defense can't do everything. So without having depth at offensive line, without having depth, just to be honest, even on defense, a couple injuries happen. Like Khalil Mack goes down, like that probably hurts their defense a lot. Like, and I know it would hurt a lot of guys when you Aaron Donald goes down, it hurts the Rams, but the Rams defense will probably still be good even without Aaron.
Better off than the Bears.
Yeah, exactly. So I just, the lack of depth, and then the lack of weapons, like you said, like Allen Robinson, but there might be players that are just like, I don't want to go through this, and they're going to leave. Like Khalil Mack left Oakland because he didn't want to be there going through a rebuild. Why won't he just be like, what, Chicago, I want to be out of here now too. Like at some point, some of those veterans want to go win rings, and they don't want to go through 4 years, 5 years of rebuild or whatever it might be. So it's just, I definitely don't have a good feeling about the Bears doing anything anytime soon. One thing that is coming up, of course, is the MLB playoffs. So I want to transition there. And we have our favorite team, the Chicago White Sox, finally in it. The magic number is, by the time you're recording this, hopefully they've clinched that division by now. So by the time you're listening to this, they should be in the playoffs. It would be the first time in franchise history that they've ever been in the postseason 2 straight years, which is just mind-boggling to me. That stat still is mind-boggling. So it'll be great to never say that ever again. They finally will have done it. Obviously there's a lot of races still left to be decided at the time of this recording, a lot of good ones, especially the wild card. But for you, are there any teams, besides the White Sox at this point, that you see as top contenders to win it all? I mean, I'm actually watching Toronto right now if they make it, but I'll talk about that in a second. So for you, like who are you looking at as a possible, like kind of a dark horse contender? Milwaukee obviously is another one. So
I think I have probably like 4. And I think really, obviously the Giants and Dodgers, like everyone will say that, but I, like you said, I really love Toronto, right? Not the fact that they've just won like 16 out of their last 19 games, but I love the lineup, right? Bichette can hit, Gurriel can hit, Springer can hit, Vladdy can hit. They have hitters. And, when I explain all my teams, you're going to see there's something I always stick to is you need 3 starters in the postseason. Yeah. If you're going to win a ring, you need 3 starters, right? Well, Toronto's got Robbie Ray, Ryu, and Berrios.
Yeah.
So they're right there. They're a little weak in the bullpen, and that hurts in October because that becomes more emphasized. But
for sure,
I love that they have 3 starters, and I love that they can hit the hell out of the ball. So that at any time, that puts you as a contender to win. And then I also kind of the same formula, same kind of team identity as Boston, right? The Red Sox. I mean, JD Martinez, Devers, Xander Bogaerts, Kike, Renfroe. I mean, those guys could all hit. And then the 3 starters of Aldi, Sale, and Tanner Houck. So, again, bullpen a little shaky, but I love their offense, their makeup. They can hit the hell out of the ball, but they also can pitch a little bit, and that's what you need. Obviously, the White Sox contender, and then the Brewers was my other that I really wanted to mention because I think it's so asinine to me because I'm bringing up teams here with big offenses, right? Big guys who can hit. Who George Springer is, Rafael Devers, Bogarts, these guys. But I mean, the Brewers are doing it with Adames, Edbo Escobar, like Luis Urias. Like no one knows who these are, right?
I know.
It's pitching, right? 3 starters: Woodruff, Burns, and then you throw in Lure in there too. Like he's a good pitcher. You got Peralta, and then you close it off in the 8th inning with Devin Williams, and then shut it down with Hader in the 9th. Like
their team looks deadly for sure.
Right. It's a team I don't want to play in October if I'm a National League team. So you can be scared of the Giants and the Dodgers, and that's all expected. But I don't want to play Milwaukee. Hell no.
Yeah. And I absolutely agree. Sticking with Milwaukee for a second, like they have the pitching, but like you said, they've been the one thing in the beginning of the year, and I was talking about this. I always looked at whoever came out of the Central because at the time it was too early. Like the Brewers were actually still not taking over at that point. The last time I talked about this, their offense, I was thinking like they've been inconsistent over the years where their pitching has been really good, but then they go through stretches where they don't score enough runs. And when you get to October, it doesn't matter how good your pitching is if you're not scoring. So they might be losing some close games. Also, your bullpen doesn't matter if you're losing when you get to the 8th and the 9th and things like that. So, there was those things that were concerned, but the thing that I've seen recently is their offenses seemed pretty consistent all of a sudden. So it's like, okay, like here comes the Brewers. Like their starting pitching is deadly. Like in a short series, I do not want to play the Brewers. So when you obviously whoever comes out of the West is going to be the 1 seed, and then whoever the Dodgers or Giants, if they survive their wild card game, whoever was in it. Would also stay away from the Brewers. So I bet they're very happy about that because they would just play each other and beat each other up. The Braves are probably a little worried that they got to possibly go to Milwaukee, seeing as how, and that's even if the Braves have won it, because I've said this before all year, it seems like nobody wants to win the NL East. So we'll see who even survives. I mean,
the Mets might jump. Phillies, Phillies. I mean, they could jump up and grab it too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was watching the last night, and they lost to Colorado, lost the series to the Rockies. So
it's definitely.
That is. I wanted to say something because you were talking about how Milwaukee through the years has always gone through offensive stretches towards the end of the year where they just can't. They get 3 hits like a game.
Yeah,
and difference this year is, and I know this will get a lot more exemplified like when you get to the postseason because it starts becoming more game by game basis. But it seems a lot this year. They're losing 5-1, and I check in the 8th and 9th inning, they put up like 7 runs to come back and win the game. Like they're just a special team, man. I've never seen that out of the Brewers. Like when the Sox sucked, my dad was always excited about the Brewers and then the playoffs, and I would too. But and I watched them. But to see them 35 games over 500 with that pitching staff and that bullpen, I can't imagine being the Dodgers or Giants with 97 wins or whatever they got right now and being scared of Milwaukee.
Yeah, and I'm sure I mean, they're just worried about winning whoever wins the division, but at the same time, it's just like I'm sure there's somebody in the coaching staff or the management, whoever is looking at, they're probably like, oh man, I hope that Milwaukee gets upset in that first round because I don't want to play them. Because the thing is like you called it. They don't have just 3 pitchers; they have 4 pitchers that you got to worry about. So they're very good in a 7-game series as well. So you got to and that bullpen, like we all know, bullpens are one of the biggest reasons why you win in October. So they have one of the best at this point. Especially in the back end, and going back to Toronto. Whenever you score 44 runs in 3 games, your offense is pretty scary. And then the other
they hit when they played against Baltimore or whatever, they had like the double headers and stuff. I think in 3 games, same thing. They hit like 12 home runs. Like, wow.
Yeah, it's things that I wish that I was seeing from the White Sox at this point in the season. They still have some time to get hot. I'm still waiting for it because I'm a little worried that they're just kind of walking to the end here. But because I feel like that doesn't always work out for teams. But there have been some teams like the Cardinals, also coached by Tony La Russa, that seem to walk into a wild card spot. And then, or actually, I think they won a division that year as one of the weak divisions. And they ended up winning the World Series out of nowhere.
The year before, I think they went to the wild card. They went to the NLCS, I think, and they lost. So, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's like, they have those things going on, but I look at Toronto as a team that if they make the playoffs, they're throwing Robbie Ray in that wild card.
Absolutely.
They're going to be tough to beat, and then they're going to play most likely the Rays, and they play each other all the time and have shown that they could beat them. So I could very easily see Toronto making it to the ALCS if they make the playoffs. Obviously, it won't be easy, but Toronto in the ALCS, then you got to be like, okay, what's going to hold them back? Like you said, the bullpen, but say the White Sox are the team that makes it, or like they have flaws too. So that could be an insane series if we get like White Sox Blue Jays or something. I almost don't want the Blue Jays to make it that far for a chance for the White Sox to make a run. Granted, Tampa Bay is a really good team, but I would rather see them at this point. I feel like the Sox kind of handled them a little bit this year.
Well, that's another thing too, is, I mean, I agree to a certain extent, but at the same time, I think I would like to see Toronto only because I don't want to see Tampa Bay, just because we just don't have, we don't match up well against Tampa Bay. I never felt comfortable. I went to the Saturday game when Keuchel pitched. That kind of started his downward spiral.
Yeah,
but it just didn't feel like we matched up well against them, and I always felt good against Toronto. I mean, I know Toronto could hit it, right? But if we make the playoffs and whatever when this drops, and if things stay stand, right, we're gonna be playing Houston in the first round, which is kind of like Toronto, right? A little bit like Toronto.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to see Toronto if they get hot, but I'd rather have them than Tampa Bay because, Tampa, it's like they don't have the guys, but they somehow make it work. And I don't know. And last time we were in the playoffs, 2008, they bounced us. So
yeah, that is true. Yeah, that is true. And the one thing that I have to say is that I don't like the prospect of the White Sox playing any of those road games. I mean, they at least did okay in Toronto. So to your point there, maybe I feel more comfortable with them being on the road for those road games. And the White Sox would have home field as well if they played Toronto, if everything holds the way it is at the time of this recording, which we're recording on September 16th. But the one thing is like Houston, like if the Sox don't end up getting home field there, I do not like them going to Houston for the first two games of a division series. Like I just think the Sox struggle, defensively somehow they don't do good. They misplay balls off the wall, like fly balls, like they don't know what they're doing. I know their lineup would be a little bit more steady than what we've seen, where it's just like a different lineup all the time to rest guys at this point. But still, I just I'm not feeling confident about those types of things. And actually, I wanted to get to that now because I want to get to your confidence level for a deep postseason run for the White Sox. If they have postseason success, potential World Series berth, or even a title, what do you think is going to be the biggest reason that they were able to get hot and get all their facets working? Because as we all know, you look at their bullpen on paper, it should be better than it's been. They blow way too many saves still. And then when you look at their lineup, if everybody starts to do well at the same time, it's one of the best lineups in baseball. It's just the problem. It's like right now, Jimenez started okay. You can tell his timing's not there. Robert's doing really good, and Tim Anderson was injured, so he's got to get back into timing. There's all these little things like that, and then our starters, like Keuchel's been terrible, and that's a little concerning. And then Cease is like he's going to be the best pitcher or he's going to be the worst pitcher, it seems, on games. And Giolito hasn't been as lights out as he's been in the past either. So, I mean, what do you think that, when you look at it, which of those things that I just talked about correcting is more important?
Well, I think For the first thing that I think is most important, and I've noticed this a lot lately, and I don't know if it's just we're going through the motions, kind of like you said, and there's no real like lack of urgency in us right now.
Yeah.
But it's the offense, right? Runners in scoring position. I cannot stand this. I wish they had a stat on this, on how many times we've had runners on third base with less than 2 outs and strike out every damn time. Every time they strike out.
Yeah.
So that is something that they need to work on, is runners in scoring position, hitting the ball, at least putting it in play. Give me something situational off. That is what they're struggling with heavily. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just to add to that, I see that all the time. It's one of my biggest pet peeves as well. I mean, that's how they've lost extra inning games, by not scoring a run. It's like, what? Like, you have a free runner on second. How are you not getting him in to score? Like, they'll be on the road and they'll just somehow not bring him home. The other day against the Angels, they had a runner on third, less than 2 outs. Just hit a sacrifice fly. Like, why can't they hit sacrifice flies? We could probably rant about that for like hours. Like, I just don't understand it, how they're not playing, normal base. It's like, these are fundamental baseball things. Like, you have a great team in October. You better be doing that. You better be sacrifice button guys and things like that, because you're going to be going up against some good pitching staffs. You got to manufacture runs,
That's what I don't understand. Like, I get it. I love the White Sox. I love this offense. Like, this is the team I want. But I just cannot fathom how we start some innings with leadoff doubles, and it's like now guys are coming up trying to hit a 2-run bomb. Like you're bringing up the other night, that was the 9th inning, right? Leary gets that field single, makes it first and third, and Goodwin comes up and he's swinging for the center field fence. Like, all I need to do is just put wood on ball. That's all you need to do.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Like, I don't care if he gets thrown out at home. At least put the ball in play, because I can't take strikeouts. Sheets is the same way. He loves those. Like, this is the home run derby when he comes up to.
Yeah.
So I mean, that has got to change. The bullpen and stuff, I'm not like. The pitching is worrisome, right? The holds, the bullpen's got to work on holds and save opportunities, and the pitching has got to work on the first 3 innings of a game, kind of getting that rhythm, that command. But I think those things will come. Like, Lynn's a good pitcher, Giolito's a good pitcher, Rodon's a good pitcher, and like, I know people are worried about the Kimbrel in the 8th inning thing, but like, let's be honest. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer, and when October rolls around, you think Kimbrel's going to be blowing saves or hold opportunities for Hendricks? Like, I don't see it. So I'm not worried about the bullpen and the pitching. I know that will come around. Those are veteran guys, but what worries me is the offense, right? Because we're not showing we can hit runners in scoring position now. What do you think what happens when, Tampa unloads their bullpen on us? Or say if we were to get to the World Series and play the Brewers, you think they're getting hits off of Devin Williams and Hader later on in the game?
Probably not. No, not a chance. And that's just manufacturing runs. And also, like, it's not even sometimes there's specific guys that aren't good in runners in scoring position. Like, Vaughn has been terrible all year, and I know he's a rookie, but it's like, what's he trying to do? Like, just put the ball in play, man. Like, even if you move the guy over, you did your job. Like, they're not even doing that. Like, and that is very worrisome, because that seems like something you should have been doing since spring training, like.
After preaching the choir the other night, I was yelling at the wife too. Same thing. I was like, I just don't understand how you can't put the ball in play. I don't get it. It's not like that's all we need. I'll even take a fly ball, like a ground ball the other side, but and it's not even just, we're talking about, what was that, Wednesday night? Like, it's not even just Wednesday night. Like, it's often, it happens often.
So and throughout the game too, it wasn't even just that 9th inning. You don't know how many times I see bases loaded, 1 out, second and third, 1 out, and they don't score any runs. And I'm just like, this is insane.
Right. When bases loaded, no one out, I'm not even excited anymore, because I'm like, here comes a strikeout and then a double play after that. That's another thing. Double plays they hit into.
Yeah.
They got.
I think they hit into like 5 today. Like, every time they had a chance, a rally. And it's like, we see what the offense can do too, and it's just like, do they not understand that if they start manufacturing these runs, and then also do the other things that they've been doing, like, they might be scoring 10 runs a game? Like,
right.
It's just once you get to the postseason too, like, it's like, you're not going to be hitting 15 home runs a game. Like, you're playing better teams, maybe you have one game like that, but if they play Tampa Bay, we know how they play. They'll take their starter out in the 2nd inning and just throw a bunch of arms at you for the rest of the game, so you don't have time to kind of catch up and figure things out. Like, if you thought you were getting the timing down against one pitcher, they put in a different pitcher. So if you're not manufacturing runs, you're not going to score a lot. Like, and if they're only scoring 1-2 runs, they're not going to go far. Like.
I mean, that's a great point, right? That's what Tampa, that's their formula, right? We're going to throw our starter for 3 innings, but after that, you're not going to see the same pitcher twice through the line, right? You're going to see him one time, he'll go through the lineup, and that's it. So you never really get a chance to adjust, and that's what worries me. They don't feel like a team that can adjust on the fly, or like whenever we need the big hits later in the games, like all their runs come in the first 5 innings against the starter. Once the other team's bullpen comes in the game, it's like, a double here, a single there, a duck snort there, but it's like no kind of rhythm, no kind of consistent basis.
Yeah.
And so, but when you're talking about October, that was another thing I wanted to say, and because you brought it up, was defense, right? We got to stop throwing the ball all over the place. And another thing is the errors. I mean, is throwing decisions, right? 3 errors today they made that cost us 5 runs.
Yeah.
So you can't be doing that in October. I mean, Mikado, like, I don't know how much more time or how many shuffles you need at third base to make throw to Braves' chest, but I'm tired of seeing the ball in the dirt every single time you beat the dirt. So the defense has got to tighten up. And, La Russa's got to put out the best 9. I know he's not doing that for rest issues now, but these guys got to get going before postseason. We can't just like show up game 1 and like expect everything to go well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm worried about the end of the season, because I feel like that. I understand the importance of it, especially for pitchers. Like, make sure, Rodon only threw 40-something innings, like, in a season before. So, like, getting him some rest so that his shoulder's strong, making sure Lynn's knees is good to go, and Giolito doesn't have any more, like, hamstring type issues. All that's important. Mixing in bullpen guys that we're probably not going to use in October is also, I completely understand that. You don't want to blow out Hendricks or Kimbrel before the games really are going to get amped up. But at the same time, when it comes to hitting, like, I'm just like I understand, like, Grandal's going to need some rest. You can't have him play every game, but the bottom of the order in some of these lineups that La Russa puts out are some of the worst bottoms of the order that I've ever seen. Like, I'll look at these lineups and I'll be like, well, there's 3 out, 1, 2, 3 innings, like, multiple times, like, and that it happens all the time. It's like today, it's like, okay, you threw out Romy Gonzalez, and then you had, like, Zach Collins in there. Not sure why we brought him back up, because it's just like, I know Sebi Zavala isn't like batting 300 going nuts, but he's a better defensive catcher, and he at least showed that he can hit sometimes. Like, Collins just seems useless at this point, so I'm not sure.
That's another thing. Like, I know we're preparing to go to the postseason, but you send down Sebi and you bring up Zach. That dude's swinging an icicle. Like, how are you going to put him in the lineup? Like, I don't know. Like, and that's a lot of things we said. He comes out with these lineups, and I'm looking, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Damn, we look good. And then we get like Goodwin, Collins, like Cesar Hernandez. Like, I love Hernandez, but that guy can't hit either. Jesus.
Yeah, I know. The thing with Hernandez and my brother Michael actually said this. He's like, he hit all his home runs for Cleveland. He's not going to hit many for us. It's like, I kind of knew that, because he already hit 20. It's like a career high. Like, he's hit like 1, I think, for the Sox. The problem with him is, I'm just like, the thing with Hernandez is, I'm like, okay, you're batting 9th in the order, and we know you're a good bunter. Like, you bunt great. I want to see him bunting more. Like, the other day, like, it's like he's striking out. It's like, if you bunted, the game's tied. Like, no one was going to play you on that, like, on one of your great bunts that you put in. Like,
that's another thing I'd like to see Tony amp up a little bit. And I don't know if it is because we're just going through the motions, or just kind of like trying to just do what we can to get to October, but like more situational, right? Why are we not, like, Anderson could go grab a bag, Robert could go grab a bag, like, Leary, sometimes I'd like to see us bunt a lot more, instead of, like, we're so very, like, dependent on, like, moving base by base by base, like, from hit. Sometimes you got to make it up a little bit, like, let's let Robert go grab a bag and let Cesar drop one down, or, and then maybe we're not striking out with runners on 3rd and 1 out anymore. Maybe now it gets things going. Guys start seeing the ball better. I don't know, but I'd like to see that. I'm tired of just seeing a double and then just like, let's let everybody hit and see what happens. Like, that's not how you play baseball.
We'll see what happens. But the way I look at it, a lot of those other teams that we talked about, I see them doing those things. And that's kind of what concerns me. I feel like those teams seem to be ready to make runs. Like, you think the Brewers are not going to be manufacturing runs? Like, they know what they're doing. Craig Counsell knows how to get those guys ready to go. Like, it's just, Toronto putting up crazy numbers. Like they seem to come through when they need it. And I feel like even some of the teams that the Sox should beat come through when they need it. They get the 2-out hit, the 2-out base hit, or they get the sacrifice fly. The Sox got to start learning from those things and doing that, because I literally think that that's going to be the difference between them winning the championship and them going home early. Like, I think it's that simple.
Yeah. And I mean, like you were talking about Council and, Kevin Cash and Tampa, like those guys find a way to manufacture runs because that is how you win in October. Right. And I don't see, like, I get Tony's a genius and I'll agree with anybody on that. I really do. I mean, I think he's a great manager, but he's a very pitching orientated manager. Like that's how we win baseball is by pitching. Right. But when the bullpen's not there, like you've seen this year, we need the hits. Or we need to find a way to score, and he's not very good at doing that, right? Manufacturing the runs that we need.
Yeah.
But also, here's a question I have for you, honestly.
Okay.
How would you feel, because Keuchel, right? Like we can't roll with him in October right now.
Yeah.
How would you feel about moving Kopech from the bullpen to a starter? Because that's what's going to happen next year. So why don't we just do it in October?
Yeah. So I mean, I thought that was going to be a thing in the beginning of the year that happened. But it became apparent that they really wanted to control his innings this year because he just came off that injury. So I personally don't see it happening. I can totally see him slipping into a role where we start him and he pitches 3-4 innings and then we go to the bullpen. I definitely see that. And I would be fine with that. I think that would be a great strategy. And I kind of hope that maybe they do something like that, because I don't know, Kopech had a couple of bad games, but I don't know if when you notice his good games, he's really good. And if you get him some rhythm out there and he gets some more inning, I mean, the last couple of times, I know he gave up a homer the other night, but those things happen. He looked really good the last couple of times against, some decent hitting teams. The Angels aren't completely inept. Like they have some hitters, obviously with Ohtani and those guys, but it's just, Boston has a great lineup and Kopech made them look like bums. They had no idea what was coming. Like he looked great and he went out for multiple innings too. And he pitched the day before that too. So it was nice to see that. So I think that they can totally, especially in a short series, throw Kopech for a couple of innings. I mean, the thing with Keuchel is I don't trust him at all to come in and get you a lot. They might need to use him as a starter because, is he really going to be a bullpen guy? You know what I mean? They have to find a spot for him. He's making $20 million, so he's not going anywhere anytime soon. They can't just not roster him. So I can see them throwing Keuchel for 2-3 innings and then maybe bringing in Kopech for 2-3 innings. I can see that being something that happens. I could definitely see them not throwing Keuchel in that first series, though, at all. I'm not sure who they're going to put number one. At this point, I would hope it's Lynn because I think he's the best pitcher on the staff at this point. And then Rodon is really good, but you can throw Giolito. I don't either. You're not really going to go wrong, but it's going to be Lynn, Giolito, Rodon in whatever order they decide to go with. And then it's if you get to a fourth game in the division series, depending on do they want someone going on short rest? Maybe if they're losing the series at that point, but if they're winning the series, do they throw a Dylan Cease in game 4 or do they go Keuchel in game 4? Those are a lot of questions. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I personally think that everybody's going to have a short leash in the playoffs. So they're really going to need Lynn, Rodon, and Giolito to not be done after they're going to need at least 5 strong innings out of those guys, because otherwise their bullpen will get taxed in a series, especially if it has to go the distance, and I think to your point of Kopech, I think he actually could be a huge help if he can come in and spell because in a lot of games Keuchel will be okay for 3 innings and then he blows up in the 4th and the 5th inning. So if he throws 3 innings and you're like, you know what, let's go to Kopech now. Suddenly that changes things in that start because you just had Keuchel, who's a pitch to contact hitter, throws sinkers, he's not really going to strike a lot of guys out. And now all of a sudden you're seeing 99, 100 crazy movement on sliders from Kopech. Hitters will be very messed up timing wise at that point. They could be a almost a deadly combo. And the same thing goes with Cease. If you notice, Cease, in a lot of the games he struggled, it's 1 inning. So if you can have him go as long as he can go, and then as soon as he gets into trouble, you're like, okay, Cease, we're taking you out. We're not letting you give up 10 runs in this inning, and we'll bring in a Kopech, to spell you at this point. If it works out like that, that could also be a deadly combo. I know they're both pitchers that have a pretty good fastball and they have movement on a bunch of pitches, but I still think it'll be hard for guys to timing wise to sort of adjust to those pitching changes, and it could help the Sox in that sense. So I mean that does go to our point. I think their pitching will be fine. I think that the reason they lose is going to be because they're leaving runners on third with less than 2 outs. I think that's going to be the biggest reason why they don't win a series, in October. So
yeah, I agree with you. I think that will definitely, like you said, pitching will be fine. But it's a little bit why I asked you, is because I thought, now it seems kind of like pointless, right? Like, what good does it really do for Kopech to come pitch the 6th and the 7th and a little bit of the 8th? Like, that's not really helping us right now,
Yeah.
And I kind of want to see I'd love to see Dallas go 2 innings. I think if he goes 2 innings, we could get 2 out of him, and that'd be fine. That's all I can ask for out of him, because it seems like once you start getting into the 4th or 5th with him and these guys start coming a second time around, like, that's when he gets teed off.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see 2 out of DK, and then maybe bring in Kopech, right? Change up the speeds. Yeah. And you let Kopech ride maybe 3 or 4 innings, bring Crochet in after that. Like,
yeah.
Dude.
And then you got
that's what I'm saying. There's so many arms, so much to play with. I'd like to see Tony spread it out a little bit more. Like, I don't like to see Dallas. He pitched 112 pitches the other night. I don't want that.
Yeah, I know. I don't want that either. You're just waiting for the bad inning to happen,
right?
Because he's a pitch to contact hitter. So if people got his timing down, I think that's what's been killing him. I don't know if he's tipping his pitches or he's missing it. He's definitely walking more guys than he used to. So I think that's a big problem with him too.
That's zero command. No command.
And you can't have no command as a pitch to contact hitter. You need to hit your locations, because that's the point. You change your speeds and you hit your locations to throw the hitter off. So the hitter never has timing. So all the contact he makes is weak. It's a ground ball, it's a pop up, or a lazy fly ball. And that's when Keuchel is his best. And, he just,
he's a very nip at the zone type of guy. Right. But now lately, he was a little better last night, but lately it's like, either it's a ball, like a changeup way off the outside corner, or he throws a sinker that doesn't sink, or a cutter that doesn't cut, and it gets hammered to the hot dog stand in the concourse.
Yeah. And I even if he corrects things at this point, I don't see him and doing. He's definitely not going to be asked to go 5-6 in any postseason game. Like I said, we can literally talk about those flaws forever. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm only going to talk bad about the Sox or whatever. I love the Sox. I've been having a lot of fun this year. The reason why I'm critiquing them like this is because I'm into the games, watching all the games. And I do have confidence that if they manufacture runs, that their team is definitely good enough to win the World Series. But it's just, and I'm enjoying the ride and all of that. But the thing is again, when you're into a team and you're excited about winning in the playoffs and everything, you're going to critique a little bit those little things that you would like changed. And you're definitely going to bitch about the things that you've seen throughout the year that you're just like, why do you keep doing this? It's been months now and you're still doing the same things.
I mean, I agree, right? I mean, we haven't seen, aside from last year, the COVID year, I still like to say that doesn't really count. So if you think about it, we haven't seen the playoffs in 13 years, right? So I've watched other teams. I know that it's just the little stuff that slips all these teams up. Like a lot of the times with the Dodgers, how many years in a row they could have won it, but a little slipped them up. And you're right. It's human nature for us to care so much, right? Because you want to get those things cleaned up. Because I know for a fact this team could win the World Series, for a fact.
Yeah.
But clean up the little things, like you said, and that's most important.
Yeah, so it'll be fun to see. By the time you guys are listening to this, it'll be fun to see where all the races are, and who's clinching and all that, and then obviously for the playoffs, I'm excited. Barring some sort of horrific nightmare, the Sox should be there, and I'm just excited to see fans in the stands and just to sort of see that actual playoff atmosphere that wasn't really there last year. And, just to see just how every pitch, like your heart is like pumping, that's like so much fun. And we've gotten glimpses, that Tampa Bay series earlier in the year, the Boston series like this recently. Oh, the Field of Dreams game was just like, it was like a movie ending. That was amazing. But like we've gotten those glimpses of like what it is. It's still not even close to what it's going to be. As a fan watching in the playoffs, like when your team's in it, it's really amazing. It's just like every pitch, you're just like, oh man, especially as it gets later in the game, depending on what the score is, the situations. I'm jacked. I'm excited for it. And I know, I'm sure you are too.
I'm pumped up, Anthony. I can't wait for
it. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And this is actually a great time too, for anyone into sports. There's so many things going on right now. I'm so excited about that. I feel like every time I'm done watching something, there's something else to watch, and that's exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, so for sure, thanks for coming on, man. It was awesome to talk a little bit here. It's always fun to talk some sports with a fellow sports fan, catch up a little bit, talk about your college time and all that. So some good stories there. And maybe we should definitely do this again. Maybe next time you can give everybody your secrets to picking that right bet, because I know you're probably rolling in those bills with all those bets you know how to get, right? Like,
yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I always, like I told you, I always wanted to come on, so for sure we'll do it again. Yeah, next time you could do a little pick central. I'll give you a few picks for the NFL. But yeah, no, I had a great time, Ant. I appreciate you having me on. For sure, we'll do it again. Hopefully after the Sox win a World Series. Huh?
Yeah, for sure, man. So thanks to everyone who has been listening and supporting the SunDried Tomatoes podcast and YouTube channel. Thanks to everyone who has subscribed and downloaded the podcast. And to anyone that's subscribed to my YouTube channel, checked out some of those shows. This wouldn't be possible with all your support, and I really do appreciate it. Thanks again to Austin for joining me this month, and until next month, salute.